I have on the line Seton Motley, who is president of lessgovernment.org. Certainly sounds like a worthwhile organization. Unfortunately, it has very little to do with the United States. And he's also editor of StopNetRegulation.org. I got a little bit of information on his background here. Director of Communications for the Media Research Center, and he's also a contributing editor to newsbuster.org. Seton, are you with me?
I am indeed, Peter. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Anyway, so I wanted to talk to you about what is going on now with the FCC. What power grab are you referring to, and where's this coming from?
This is coming from the fevered brains of the media Marxists that make up the media quote-unquote reform movement. And unfortunately, a couple of them are on the FCC. 3 of them, it appears, as given by the vote today. Look, here's basically what's happening. They wanted to oppose net neutrality. They've been dying to impose net neutrality, but they don't have the authority to impose net neutrality.
Okay, for my listeners, what is net neutrality?
Okay, there were 4 principles prior to the arrival of Chairman Julius Genachowski at the FCC, and of course, preceding him, the arrival of Barack Obama. There were 4 principles of net neutrality, and nobody had any problem with them. He brought with him 2 more. One is non-discrimination of content, which they are for, and what's the other one? Let's do non-discrimination first. I'll figure the other one in a second. Non-discrimination. Okay. You and I live next door to one another. You're downloading a movie. I'm updating my Twitter account. At that moment, you need more bandwidth than do I. So what the Internet service provider does is they manage the network. They say, okay, Peter gets more Internet than Seton right now. Later, okay, Peter's done with his movie. We'll move it over here. Comcast gets 1 million URL requests a second, and they manage it. Net neutrality says they can't manage the network. It turns the Internet into dumb tubes, and what it really does what is net neutrality is socialism for the Internet. It guarantees everybody equal amounts of nothing. So that's the other one. The other one is that's non-discrimination. The other is paid priority of content. Let's look at a real-life example. You go into Federal Express. You want to deliver a package. You pay for 7-day delivery. You pay for 3-day delivery. Obviously, you pay more for the 3-day delivery, but there's 9 million examples in the private sector where you pay more for faster or better service. Mm-hmm. First class versus coach on an airplane, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Net neutrality says you can't do that either. It tells the hospital that needs to download the MRI for the dying patient, you can't get any more bandwidth no matter what you pay than the guy next door to you who's downloading the Panda Sneezes video on YouTube. Mm-hmm. And it's like telling the fire department, okay, that house is on fire, the guy next door is brushing his teeth, but you get equal amounts of water for both houses. Mm-hmm. That's what net neutrality is. So,
okay.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. So finish. So now, okay. What is changing now?
These guys want to impose net neutrality. They don't have the authority. The FCC tried in 2007. They got sued, and in April of this year, the D.C. Circuit Court, which is just below the Supreme Court, unanimously ruled that the FCC has no authority to do this. The Congress has to write a law before the FCC can do anything, and they have not done that. You know who admits that Congress has never written a law doing that? The chairman of the FCC, Chairman Julius Genachowski, who said it to the Washington Post about 2 months ago. So when that ruling came down in April, you heard a lot of talk, if you were watching this issue, about reclassification. They were going to move how the FCC treats the Internet and move it and treat it like a landline phone line, because nothing says Internet like 1930s law. So they were going to do that, and they were talking about that, and that would have been a huge power grab. So all of a sudden, 8 months later, under cover of Christmas, when no one's paying attention, they all of a sudden vote 3-2 under the regulatory scheme that the court just told them in April, you don't have the authority to do it. So they just did it again.
So what are they doing? I mean, how is that affecting the Internet? How's that affecting me?
Net neutrality is the little Dutch boy with his finger in the dike of private investment. The people who thought this up are literally media Marxists. Now, what you have to remember is these guys are Marxists. And once you get past the technological aspects of the Internet and net neutrality, et cetera, this is an assault on the Internet industry to affect an ideological outcome.
But what is changing right now? So is this saying that internet providers, they
can't manage it. It's going to make it substantially more difficult for them to manage the network. If they can't discriminate content, then
you mean they can't discriminate? They can't discriminate what they charge customers for using the internet?
There's that too. There's price controls in this order, and there's content control in this order. The price control is you remember when Nixon did this in the early 70s? He put wage and price controls in.
So it's kind of like, I mean, what they're basically saying is, if you want to use cable as an example, if somebody has basic cable and somebody else wants, HBO, Showtime, Cinemax, all kind, that they have to pay the same price.
Yes.
Everybody pays the same price for cable, no matter. Well, then everybody's going to want the most.
Right, and then what's that going to? And then if you're going to price cap it on top of that, what's that going to do to supply?
Well, it's not going to be there. There's going to be shortage of supply.
That's exactly right. And that's what the people who thought of net neutrality want. The money quote with regard to net neutrality is from Robert McChesney, who's the godfather of the media quote-unquote reform movement. He is an avowed Marxist. He is also a college professor. Please pardon the redundancy. He wrote that the net neutrality is the necessary first step in eradicating the media capitalists from the phone and cable companies and divesting them from control. So how very Hugo Chavez of him. So the objective is to make it untenable for private investment in the internet sphere. And then who will have to come riding into the rescue? Government. Mm-hmm. Now, remember do you remember in the stimulus, the FCC was charged with writing a national government broadband plan, the first price of which was upwards of $350 billion. And people like me and others said, that's a lot of money, and they kind of backed off a bit. But if you're looking to replace the private investment with government, $350 billion is a pretty good down payment, is it not?
Mm-hmm. So we don't have net neutrality right now.
What we have is de facto net neutrality, because most customers want open internet, which is what we're talking about, which is no matter what site you go to, you get there, et cetera, et cetera. There are zero current net neutrality violations. None. Net neutrality is a solution running around looking for a problem. What they're trying to say is that the consumers don't know best, whereas if Comcast blocked you and you didn't like what they were doing to you, you couldn't figure out, you know what, I'll go get Bios. I'll go get Verizon. They don't, once again, the people are stupid. They're sheep. And therefore, the FCC has to protect them from themselves and the evil telcos, who, by the way, have invested hundreds of billions of dollars into this sphere. And let's face it, there's never been any greater advancement in any part of the world than the internet in the last 10 years. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, it's probably
it's become a free speech, free market Xanadu. And these guys it's driving them nuts that they don't regulate it. Mm-hmm. So they want to regulate it. So they vote themselves internet overlords.
But is part of the clothing that they're shrouding this in, the idea that, we have to make sure that everybody gets equal access to the internet, that that the poor people aren't shut out, that there's not, that everybody gets the same service for the same price. Is that what they're trying to do, or?
That's exactly right. Remember, so once you get past this, these guys are Marxists, and it's about it's about everybody getting the equal treatment, everybody getting fair treatment. And what they don't understand is, in the free market, as you understand, as I understand, when there are tiered offerings, look at your cell phone bill. There are 9 different tiered pricing options for how many minutes you use, what kind of data plan do you want, et cetera, et cetera. Is anyone really suffering?
No, but you're saying that they can't do that now. If you're using internet through your cable company, there's only one class of internet service. You can't get faster.
No. There are a couple, but for the vast majority of customers, it's just a basic hookup. Mm-hmm. Now, my Comcast offers a business class at my house, which is a second tiered pricing. But there really isn't tiered pricing. But part of the reason they want to do this is to take the real big bandwidth hogs, like, for example, Netflix, who's now going almost exclusively to download movies rather than mailing you movies. They're going to chew up a lot of data. And for people who do that, like you pointed out earlier, they're going to be using a lot more bandwidth than the grandmother next door who's emailing her daughter and granddaughter. So they want to make sure, they want to streamline it, and not streamline it, but even it out where that everybody pays the same thing. So the grandma's going to have to pay substantially more, even though she's not using anywhere near.
Yeah, and I think that distorts the market, because maybe Netflix should be mailing more movies, but if it's free to do them online, but at the same time you're imposing external costs on other people, the internet service providers have to be able to correctly price their services. And if people are using the internet all day to watch movies, then they need to pay a higher cost. And what that will do will mean they will watch fewer movies online, or maybe they will, if there isn't enough bandwidth to support it. Because otherwise, you're just going to end up putting all the costs on the people who aren't doing it. It's like a toll on a bridge. The toll is there for the people who use the bridge. What they want is they want to lower the toll, and then they want to charge people who aren't even crossing the bridge.
Right, that's exactly right. How fair is it? This is the spread the wealth around mentality. Why am I responsible? Why are you responsible for paying for your next door neighbor who's watching 6 movies a day while you're at work?
But of course, a company like Netflix, they'd be all in favor of this, because of course that's what they want.
That's a very important point. As they made the shift from, as they're in the midst of making the shift from mailing to download only, they have a company called Level 3. And, of course, what we're talking about here is like what they call the last mile, which is between the internet service provider, your internet service provider, and your house. Behind that last mile is a whole big, giant, global, worldwide web network. And there are hundreds of companies in there, and what they do is they share their bandwidth. It's called peering. And what they do is, if it's relatively equal, if you're using someone else's tubes as roughly as often as they use yours, you just kind of do it back and forth, and you don't charge each other, and it's going on all the time. Well, level 3 came in with Netflix and said, well, we're dropping in here and we're going to start really hogging some bandwidth. And Netflix said, and Comcast said, whoa, we're going to have to charge you for that. And level 3 knowing what was going on at the FCC claimed that this was a net neutrality violation, which it's not, because it has nothing to do with the last mile between the internet service provider and your house.
All right, well, hold on. We're coming up.
100 different companies competing against one another.
We're coming up on a commercial break, so let's hold this off till after the break, and we'll talk a little bit about how the internet might change now in the next few years and what we can do potentially about it. So don't go away.
Since the Peter Schiff Show was last on the air, the national debt added another $7.89 million. Luckily, Peter's intelligence is growing twice as fast.
That's incredible.
Welcome back to your source of sanity in an insane world. It's the Peter Schiff Show.
Welcome back, everybody, and we are talking about the internet, net neutrality, and the FCC with Seton Motley, president of lessgovernment.org and editor of StopNetRegulation.org. Seton, so based on what's happening now at the FCC, what do you see as the immediate impact the next several years over the internet service use, cost of internet, and what, if anything, can we do to try to stop what's happening?
Well, okay, there's 2 things. A great parallel is what happened with Obamacare. We were told in advance this will lower premiums and this will increase coverage. What have we seen since it got passed? The premiums have gone up 20% in the first year, and employer after employer is coming out and saying, you know what, I can't afford to cover these people anymore, my employees, so I'm dropping them. A similar thing will happen with the internet, but it will be more gradual. It's not like net neutrality goes into effect and it goes from 60 miles an hour to 0. It goes from 60 to 55. Then it goes from 55 to 50. Then it goes from 50 to 45. It's a degradation of service over time, because it's not like the internet's just going to collapse in a heap. It's just it's gradual. As the investment capital dries up and goes away, the existing infrastructure starts decaying, as you expect. It's like the Cuban car situation. Everybody drives 1950s cars, which were great in the 1950s, but now they're held together with chewing gum and baling wire. That's what the internet's going to end up being like. Because when the government rides into the rescue, they're obviously going to be just as effective at running the internet as they are at running everything else.
Right, and of course the objective is to be fair, right? Oh, the internet, everybody should be treated equal. It's a democracy, and don't charge some people more. And of course, the market needs to do that to allocate use properly. People that want to use a product more pay more for it, particularly if there's a finite supply. I mean, if it was infinite, if one person's usage didn't affect somebody else, but you only have a certain amount of bandwidth.
If they charge everybody equally at the grocery store, there would be no 15 items or less lane.
Well, they charge everybody equally. I mean, there'd be no generic products. Everybody would buy the best of the best, right? If all the food, nobody would buy hamburger if it was the same price as steak.
Right.
You have to let the market function. And besides, and the thing is, the internet service is there. It's affordable. It's everywhere. It's certainly, if the government stayed out, it's not like there'd be people who would be denied internet access.
90% of Americans have access to broadband right now, and only 65% of them are availing themselves of it, which means the vast majority of Americans have access to it, and a lot of them are choosing not to get it. So why this pressing need to equalize everybody? If they don't want it, fine. They don't have to pay for it. That's great. But this plus another point that needs to be made is 90+% of Americans are very satisfied with the internet service they currently have, which again points to net neutrality being a solution running around looking for a problem. They claim that they're making this move to defend and to the benefit of consumers. And as I said earlier today, this doesn't prove that government looks out for consumers. It proves that government looks out for government.
So what do we do? I mean, you just said, what do we do? Is this write your congressman? I mean, to get this as an issue?
We have to wait till it officially gets filed as a rule, and then we're on the clock for 60 days. The Congressional Review Act is the first thing we can do. What that is it's a way to rein in rogue agencies, which the FCC now certainly qualifies. What it is, it's a simple vote in the House. Then it goes to the Senate. All you need is 30 signatures on a letter from senators. We've already got 29. And then it's on the floor for a vote in the Senate. It is unfilibusterable, which means you don't need 60 votes. You only need 51. That's 47 Republicans. Olympia Snowe, I know this will come as a galloping shock to you, has been back and forth on this.
All right, well, look, thanks for the heads up. This is not an issue that I was paying too much attention to, but it just goes to show you got to be ever vigilant against government grabbing power. Hey, thanks for your work. Thanks for coming by the show.